Cool. Hello. Welcome back to the Happy Startup School podcast. We're on the sofa today. Hope you enjoy the backdrop of our kitchen up here in the studio in Happy Startup Studio Towers.
The washing up's been done, I noticed.
Yay! Yeah, that's the trouble when you've got people who come in and don't wash their mugs. So today we're going to be talking about learning communities. Laurence is off to Brazil at the end of the month, and you're going to be talking to...
I'm going to be talking to the attendees of an event called Learning Camp, and Learning Camp is basically a learning community. So Alex, who's behind it, who's written a book about to be published called Learning 3.0, which is, I suppose, introducing a new way of learning, a new methodology for learning. And he's asked me to go along there to talk about what I think learning communities are and why they're important. And I think the reason that came about was he came to Altitude, got the lovely t-shirt on, which was our event in the Alps back in May, and yeah, that was a week-long, I suppose, retreat where we brought together lots of entrepreneurs, 25 entrepreneurs, to work, play, have some fun, and Alex was...
Learn.
Alex actually used that time to finish off his book and saw it as a great kind of benchmark, I suppose, for what a learning community is. So what I'm going to be talking about in Brazil is really what a learning community is, what we think is critical to make it a valuable experience for everyone who's participating in it, and how we can look at future models, I suppose, of what learning is.
Also, the experience that we've had from running the homeschool,
yeah,
and actually building a learning community online. So, what's a learning community?
It's a good place to start. And it's something, I mean, it's not a talk I've done before, so I'm going to be looking at how other people describe this. And the trouble is when you put a name to anything, it's like if you talk startups or anything along in this space, it tends to be misconstrued depending on your context, really. So I think for me, it's changing the way you think about learning. Traditionally, you'd think about the teacher who knows it all. You'd think about not copying anything because you don't want to see what everyone else is up. Well, you want to see what everyone else is up to, but you don't want to compete. And I think
you don't want to look like you don't know what you're doing.
You don't want to look like you don't know what you're doing, and you also don't want to kind of make mistakes. You don't want to feel stupid. And so I think it's changing the way we think about learning in terms of making it more collaborative, looking at it as a way to work in groups together with a shared interest. So definitely collaboration rather than competition is important.
Feeling like you can ask questions even if they're stupid.
Yes, which you did a lot at school, I seem to remember. So for those of you who don't know, me and Carlos went to school together, and Carlos was the clever guy sat in the corner always putting his hand up. The teacher
didn't understand.
Neither did anyone else, but no one was kind of confident enough to put their hand up. So Carlos kind of wore most of our math teachers down by the end of it. But it shows he had a learning mindset, growth mindset, and was keen to keep, probing and asking why a lot, when most of us just wanted to
get out there and go play.
Exactly. Have our ice buns.
Enjoy the sun. Who wants to be inside a hot, sticky classroom?
And then he swapped that for a physics lab for 5 years.
Yeah, because I love being out in the sun.
That's definitely not... Well, I suppose it was a learning community of sorts.
What's that?
Your
no.
Kind of PhD.
See, for me, that's core to what academia is about. It isn't about people just being really, really clever. I think there is an atmosphere in places like elitist universities like Oxford and Cambridge where you feel like you need to be a genius to survive, and that's probably why you get a lot of suicides in those places, because there's so much pressure to look like you know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But really, when you get down to it, particularly once you've got past graduate level, everyone doesn't know a lot of the stuff. I can remember when I was doing my PhD, I was in a room writing a list of all the things I didn't know about physics, and my supervisor came in, he's like super brain box, and he looked at my list and he says, "You should have seen my list." I was like, man, it's just an example. It's like we don't know everything, and it isn't a bad thing to say you don't know it, and it's really about asking people and learning together. That's the key thing, is actually not feeling afraid to ask stupid questions.
It's that classic, the more you know, the more you realise you don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And also, if you're with people who are learning the same kind of thing, or you have the same kind of mindset, or the same vision, or the same kind of view of life, then it makes it much easier to learn stuff and not feel scared to push forward with learning new things and asking silly questions.
I think that's one of the key things for me in this new sort of model for learning. Any learning community should feel safe. So you should feel safe to make mistakes, safe to ask questions, not not feel the need to always look clever, because that just limits your learning, really, doesn't it?
And particularly with startups, is also feeling safe to try new things.
Yeah.
So to be able to feel like you've got a community or people around you who will help you take that scary step, that first step that you think, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing here, but I've got people who are going to help me along the way.
Well, I know Alex's work on Learning 3.0 has kind of evolved from the Agile movement. So, Agile started off as a way to build software, has now moved into organisational change and just ways to kind of build organisations, but also create any organisation, whether that's a school or a business. So.
And core to the Agile process is small collaborative teams.
Mm-hmm.
It's having a group of people who complement each other, but exchange information regularly and look at what they're doing, check that they're going in the right direction, and then change course if it looks like they're not doing the right thing.
Yeah. I think one of the things we found through doing homeschool, so homeschool, for those of you who don't know, is our online programme. We're on our 4th cohort starting in September. And sign up, people. And we've learnt a lot from doing that, because I think we're trying to explore creating an online learning community, which isn't that easy, really, because it's a different way to deliver content. It's a different way to create these small connections that we talked around, or deep connections, but in small groups. And so one thing we've got in our favour, I suppose, is people coming there with a shared interest of pushing their business forward, or certainly getting their idea off the ground, but also a similar set of values. So they're interested in doing business differently, they're interested in creating a positive impact, and so that really helps to create that safe environment we talked about.
They want to be happy as well as rich.
Yes, exactly. It's not either or. But I think the challenge has always been to create that trust between people, where they can openly share ideas, where they can network with each other and feel they're not just having to, again, like we talked about earlier, look clever, be vulnerable.
Well, one of the things we do, we have a Facebook group, and every week we have challenges that people are set, bits of homework, for want of a better term, and they're supposed to post it up online and show what they've done and show it to everyone else. And that can only happen if you trust everyone around you and you don't feel like you're being judged.
Yeah.
And particularly with the last cohort, there was a lot of activity, a lot of sharing going on, which shows that if you get the culture right, and the culture in terms of the community that's doing the learning together, then good things can happen and people will progress much quicker, because they feel free to share what they're learning.
And I think one of the reasons the last cohort was more engaged and I think had better outcomes was because we made it application only. So we curated it and we made sure that everyone who comes in again with the right mindset, with the right willingness to help each other. The same approach we took to Altitude. We curated who was there. We had way more applications than we did spaces. So I think, without it being an elitist event, you want to make sure that everyone who's in that group is, willing to learn and willing to share, and not just there to kind of take, I suppose.
Well, I think it's also getting away from this idea of mass market. You have to have one size fits all. Whatever you do has to appeal to everyone. And I think we're not robots. We're not all machines cut out from the same piece of metal. And so there's stuff that we do that will not resonate with anyone.
Yeah.
Well, some people, and there are people who are going to love what we do.
Yeah.
And it's better to cater for the people who
we're like
really,
Marmite.
Yes. Well, I think everyone should be like Marmite. You shouldn't be a
That's
case
a quote for everyone.
everyone should be like
Marmite.
You shouldn't have to try and think, we talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, and the first thing they think of is like, how can I, reach everyone in the world?
How can I please everyone?
How can I please everyone with my product? And actually, that's the wrong way to go around, because you start that way, you please no one. So if you start from a position of where you, by defining what you believe in, then you get people on board. Who would you want to invite to your house? You don't invite everyone.
No.
So
unless
make sure.
Like your kids have posted it on Facebook.
And
it's like a flash mob.
Yeah, a flash mob, and it gets totally wrecked. So if you don't want your house to get wrecked, only invite people you like.
But I think it's one of those things. If no one hates you, then no one probably loves you either.
No,
you're not creating a stir.
No, you're not connecting with anyone emotionally, and for every positive emotion, there's going to be someone who has a negative one.
Yeah.
And if you also, if you think of it, whatever your idea, your business as a space, you want to let people into that space that you get on with, and if you just let anyone in there, then you don't create any kind of community or any kind of connections.
Yeah.
So it might feel like we're not letting people in. It's actually we're just making sure the people who are there want to be there,
Yeah.
and we're not forcing them into the wrong place.
And there's a space for them somewhere else. It's
Yeah.
just not our space.
Yeah, it could be Y Combinator, it could be with Cedars, it could be wherever it is that they feel that their values are best met, I think.
I think the challenge with Altitude in particular was we had to turn down lots of really, really cool people who were a good fit. And I think that's the challenge we faced is just to basically work out who shouldn't be there, even if they should be there.
Oh, that's okay. We're doing this in the studio. It's open for anyone to come in and walk by.
So I think the challenge we faced was basically saying no to good people, and I think we kind of stuck to our original vision for that event. We could have scaled it up, made it much bigger, but actually we wanted a great experience that was memorable for the ones that we said we would commit to. So yeah, I think that's another challenge with the learning community is, like you said, it doesn't work at scale, and if you have a vision for what that could be, then sticking to that and not just kind of following.
Well, in the absence of values, it'll all just boil down to all decisions just boil down to money, and then if all decisions just boil down to money, then you never really create anything that's special or meaningful. So yeah, I think particularly with learning, it's about creating good connections and having that good community of trust.
I think one of the things I was going to mention about the online thing is just us being conscious of all the noise out there. There's a lot of courses out there. There's a lot of content out there. There's information being posted up every day about startups in particular and technology. But then I think the challenge we face is trying to kind of filter that out so that people who come on the course don't get bewildered. And I suppose if you're trying to create any kind of learning, then you want to make sure that whilst people have access to as much information as possible, you're not bombarding them with just too much stuff.
Yeah, not everyone has the time to research and filter and look through everything and pick the things that they need to read. And the more that you can, what we're trying to do is help people who are time poor and need that extra, or trust our judgment and trust what we're going to give them is the right stuff. Because otherwise, you run the risk of reading the wrong things all the time, and then it's a wasted effort.
I think the bit I found interesting, kind of looking at all the different stuff we've done around learning, is the further along people are, the less structure they need. So people at the really early stage, generally need a bit more hand-holding, which is no surprise, and so they're looking for guidance in terms of which tools to use, which books to read, and what process to follow. The event like Aptitude and maybe even Summer Camp is more about actually the connections, emergent learning, in Alex's words, where what you're interested in is more self-directed. I suppose you don't need people to tell you what to do. You kind of work out what to do based on what your need is. And
sometimes no one knows what to do.
Yeah.
And that's why discussing it together, you come up with the actual real plan, because you use a little bit of everyone's knowledge to then find what the actual thing it should be.
Yeah, I think it's also flipping the learning model, so it's more about asking questions rather than just kind of hearing the answers before you've asked the question.
Yeah, the world has got so complicated that it's very hard to be an expert in everything, and even the experts in one particular field don't know all the answers. And until they've actually known it's particularly for startups, unless there's a whole thing about mentors and who's the right mentor, it's actually, you can't say just because someone's done it in a certain way and been successful that they're a good mentor for you. They need to know your context, they need to know what you're trying to do. And so it doesn't mean success breeds wisdom.
No.
You need to basically talk to these people and find out more about them.
There was quite interesting, there was a program on last night about the difference in Chinese and UK education.
Okay.
Where they basically paired up Chinese teachers with UK kids and just trying to get them to understand the Chinese method for education. Is very different, very kind of traditional in terms of their approach, and just kind of completely went over the kids' heads.
Okay.
So very much based on reciting memory, really. Just
there's a lot of that.
Facts. So doing.
That's why Chinese kids are so good at maths.
Trigonometry. They just absorb. They just assume if you're taught something, you'll write it down and you'll remember it. Whether you still remember it a month later.
Well, there's a thing about there's certain things there's a baseline of knowledge. So like with maths, there is a level of repetition that you need to do before you can get to understand.
There's the rules.
The rules.
Yeah.
But when you get to a certain level and you want to use you want to use the rules to your advantage. There's no cookbook as to
Mhm.
what success is. It's like with business, there's probably some basics about business, like cash flow, taxes, whatever it is. But when it comes to making a successful business, there's no specific rule book for that.
I think the bit some of the kids struggle with is just why am I doing this? This is no use to me,
Well,
And then maybe that is something that was missing in terms of just the context of how this could be useful.
And I think that's the interesting thing about Alex's Learning 3.0 model in terms of project-based learning. I think a lot of free schools are trying to do this, is rather than just tying everything down to a specific topic, you have a project, and then you learn what's necessary to complete that project, whether it's history, whether it's maths, whether it's writing better English, I don't know what it could be.
So I know Alex one of his children's at this school called Luminar, and it's basically set up by Ricardo Semler, who took over Semco, his father's company. And if you haven't read the book Maverick and a second one called 7 Day Weekend, definitely check those out. There's actually a great TED talk that he did not too long ago, I think about a year ago, around...
So did you have a 7-day weekend to get a 4-hour work week?
Yeah, that's another podcast, I think. But yeah, the TED talk was really around his model for education and what he's learned from building a democratic company and applying that to education. But yeah, again, it's all around, like I said, projects and more self-directed learning. They don't have subjects like you might have in the UK. And like you said, there's some free schools in the UK that are adopting that model too. So yeah, check out that TED talk. It's great.
I don't think you throw away the kind of teaching traditional learning, but it doesn't necessarily work all the time. So you need to have a bit of both. There's different approaches for different types of students, but also different types of topics and different things that you're going to learn. Really.
Yeah, I think you quoted a great line from Arthur C. Clarke in that talk, and it basically said, "When there's interest, education happens." So it's really, before that point, I found it even with my kids, if they're not interested in it, it just goes over their head. Right. The second that there's any spark of interest, then they get hungry for that knowledge. It's
Minecraft for me is a fascinating tool. It's like, when would anyone be interested in how to build buildings or how to craft things out of wood unless it was in a game? And then kids get around this and they collaborate and they build new things, they learn about machines. Why? Because they want to build something out of Minecraft. But I think the key to all of this is trying to create this thirst for learning, because it's in a world that's always changing, and also a world that's fascinating. There's so many things out there. Wanting to learn more, wanting to know what's out there, because by learning more you become more creative and more innovative, because you can put that learning together in different ways to create new things.
I think it's kind of, I know for me it was almost unlearning some education, and it took me a long time to rediscover a love of learning, I suppose, and finding something I was passionate about, topics I was passionate about. Some people love, like we talked about, lifelong learning. People some people go straight from uni into reading books and just absorbing everything around them. Other people like me kind of maybe had a bit of a sabbatical from education and then found something they were really passionate about. Because I think for me it's like being forced to do something, you just lose interest in it. My wife's done a Spanish GCSE recently at the age of 40, and before that she'd been studying on her own.
Oh, she looks 21.
Yes, of course. She'll love me for that. Or you. But yeah, I think she taught herself for about a year, and then she started doing this GCSE just to have some structure, and then quite quickly realised she wasn't enjoying it anymore because she had to do things. It was almost like, I work all day and now I have to do this. And that's quite interesting in terms of, that carrot and stick, I suppose. If you feel like it's too much stick, then you kind of just feel like you're back at school again.
I think it needs to be intrinsically motivated, as they say. And that also comes from creating some kind of habit. Because with things like, particularly learning a language, it is daily practice.
Yeah.
And you can't get away from that. And that's why that's how exams work, is that it gives you a target to reach for.
But she was doing it daily anyway, so she had the bug. She was like, almost obsessed by it. And then I think just...
So there was no need to do the GCSE.
But I think, I don't think there was any need to do it. But I think it was more the feeling of like, I'm doing this because I want to versus I'm doing this because I have to.
Yeah.
And I think that's just that shift. Then you suddenly...
pressure.
You start to feel like, I don't want to. Someone's telling me I have to. I've got that.
Well, that's the whole thing about creativity and learning. It's like the more you spend Or the more pressure you're under, the less creative you're going to be, the less relaxed you're going to be, and so the less learning you're going to do. Really.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
So in conclusions, then.
In conclusions, so what are learning communities to us?
Well, I think one thing that we've been trying to tap into, like I said, is just trying to create a global, scalable learning community. Engaged as well. And I think that's the thing, is there needs to be engagement, there needs to be emergence, there needs to be interest, there needs to be a safe environment, there needs to be a shared, ideally a shared set of values, I think, or certainly where people feel trustworthy, they can trust the people they're learning with.
Well, that's the whole thing. We're either happy, we're a startup, and we're a school. Startups are unpredictable. There's no one answer on how to build a startup, and that's why it needs a new way of learning. We need to cultivate a community that has aligned values, and that's why the happiness is in there. But we still need to learn. Yeah. That's why we're a school.
And I think it's that community piece which is so key, really, is the collaboration, not looking at it as we're all fighting for the same turf, we're all trying to look better than each other, we're all trying to look like we've got, we're all winning and someone else is losing. I think showing vulnerability and the willingness to say, look, I don't know the answer. Yeah. Who's got the answer for me? Who's out there who can help? And admitting that.
Well, you're reading that book, Abundance.
Yes.
And so there's lots of stuff out there. Everyone can gain.
Exactly. It's kind of depends on your view of the world, I suppose.
Who's it by again?
Peter, I can't pronounce his surname, but he also wrote a book called Bold, and it's he's behind the SpaceX prize, and he's also behind Singularity University.
Okay.
Big, bold moonshot thinker, but he's looking at things like 3D technology and artificial intelligence, and looking at actually the future is a lot better than we think. Yeah. And if you read the press and see the media, you kind of have a much more pessimistic view of the future.
Our success is not limited.
Yeah, our success is not limited, but also it's about being collaborative, and the whole idea of collaborative consumption versus capitalism.
So let's consume knowledge collaboratively and learn in a community.
Yes, this is our new strapline. Not a bit of jargon there anyway.
Cool. Well, thanks a lot for joining us. Hope that was useful and interesting.
Yep. And just who is interested, we've got our next homeschool starting in September. The URL is home.thehappystartupschool.com. And also, if any of you happen to be in Brazil, in Sao Paulo, at the end of August, then I'll be there for a week with Alex at Learning Camp, and obviously our summer camp in September too.
Yeah. Well, catch you later.
Cool. Thanks.